الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا من سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. قال الله تعالى في كتابه العزيز والفرقان الحميد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. وقال الله أيضا: وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected elders, honorable Imam, beloved brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. All thanks and praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on this blessed day of Yawmul Jumu'ah, we beseech Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower His choicest mercies, peace, blessings, salutations, honor and dignity upon our Lord and our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, upon his beloved family and upon his noble companions. Imam Sahib, thank you very much for that very warm welcome. It is always a great pleasure to come to this masjid. Today, inshallah, we will be focusing our attention on one of the hotspots, on one of the difficult areas that Muslims are facing in the world today, and that is we are going to focus on the plight of Muslims in India. In today's pre-khutbah presentation, we focus our attention on these people, especially after the Indian Parliament has passed the controversial Citizenship Amendment Act, the CAA, and the National Registry of Certification legislation. These laws place Muslims in India, who are a politically and an economically marginalized community, it placed them at great risk of becoming stateless. This legislation for the first time introduces religion as a factor in determining citizenship and thus stands in violation of the Indian Constitution. But before I continue, let me make one thing very clear. It is not my intention to engage in a very purely secular political analysis of what is happening in India. There are specific facts which we have to take note of, but these on their own will be of no help to us, for they blind us to what our whole perspective of reality should be. We as Muslims, we are a faith community. We are a community that is defined by Iman. We are defined by our love for humanity, for the love of all of Allah's creation, and that we show malice towards absolutely no one, because Allah is the creator of everyone. We are also defined by an ethics which determines how we interact with one another, how we deal with one another, whether they are Muslim or whether they are non-Muslim, whether they are our neighbors or not, our neighbors who are near and our neighbors who are far. That is all governed by our ethics, is governed by our mu'amalat. And most important, we bring forth what we call a transcendent dimension of understanding to our faith, and that is we believe in a creator that we cannot see, and to whom we are accountable one day for all our deeds. For every little deed that we have done on this earth, we are going to be accountable for that deed. So we draw our inspiration from Allah's kalam, from Allah's revelation. And in the very first verse which I recited to you, وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ, I believe that there are three important aspects in this particular ayat which I would like to share with you. Three critical concepts or ideas which we need to apply towards any situation in which we find ourselves, which is a difficult and a challenging situation. The first part of this ayat talks about a hope. It talks about the imminence or the arrival of haqq or truth. And also if we read this ayat and we make the tafakkur over it, then this ayat also tells us that with the arrival of the hope and the arrival of the haqq, قُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا.
that falsehood will die, it will perish, because it cannot survive. Implied in that, it tells us that eventually the mu'min must become triumphant, no matter where he is in the world. Whether he be in South Africa, whether he be in Germany, whether he be in Myanmar, whether he be in India, the mu'min will be successful. And that is the important point which I want to stress to you. Because Allah in His infinite mercy has not created us that we must suffer injustice and oppression, and that will be our burden forever and forever and forever. Allah is not an unjust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is not unjust, and He will not keep us and our children and our children's children in that state without bringing redress from the difficulties we endure. It did not happen in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When the Muslims in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when they were in their worst moment, remember this, when they were in their worst moment, when they were ostracized, when they were boycotted, when they were persecuted, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in that very weak physical and material state, he gave the good news to Muslims that inshallah one day you will be successful, and the Eastern Roman Empire and the Persian Empire will come under your feet. And subhanallah, it happened. And that is the hope. That is the hope of وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقِّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. The rest of the things that I want to tell you about India today and what is happening here and what the BJP party is doing, that is all, as we say, that is all the detail. But the important thing that we need to understand, we are not in India, but our du'as will reach our brothers and sisters in India. We have family there. We have strong roots there. We have strong cultural roots there. And our Islam has to a great extent been informed by what? By that country. We talk about, in Cape Town, we talk about Malays and Indians. But did you know that over 60% of the so-called Malays in Cape Town, not that they don't have roots in Indonesia and in Malaysia, 60%, this is what our scholars and our historians have established, that 60% of the Malay population in Cape Town, that they have roots in Bengal in India. So in other words, they are more Indian than Malay. I want to tell you just one or two important ahadith before I carry on. There is a very important ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that gives us hope, that gives us strength. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Ittaqu da'wat al-madhlum." That when you are in a difficult situation, when you are oppressed, remember, there is no barrier between the dua which you make and between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore the hadith says, "Ittaqu da'wat al-madhlum." Be careful, be careful. If you oppress somebody, that person simply has to raise his hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that will mark the end of your days on this earth. The other important ahadith which I want to stress with you is that the parable, the Prophet ﷺ says that the parable of the believers in the affection, the mercy and the compassion for each other is that of a body. When any limb aches, the whole body reacts with sleeplessness and with fever. Now a large part of what I want to share with you today is simply to unmask. If we say وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقِّ, the haqq has arrived. We have to fight for the haqq. We have to establish the haqq. And part of my job here this afternoon is to share with you, because there is an alternate story which is being created. An alternate story which is being created which paints Muslims in India as if they are parasites. As if they are responsible for all of India's problems. As if they are responsible for the fact that an Indian land mass in 1947 was divided between India and Pakistan. That they were responsible for the separation of this big land mass into a Muslim state and into a secular Indian state. That Muslims are responsible for all the problems, for all the terrorism and everything that's happening in India. That is the kind of propaganda which the BJP government is pushing across. The BJP government wants people to believe that Muslims are a privileged lot of people, that they get this benefit and they get that benefit, and yet the truth of it is something totally different, which I will share with you as we go along. Now, we all carry biases and weakness. And there was one author who put it very quickly. He said, "It is quicker to sway 1,000 people by appealing to their prejudices than to convince one person by the force of logic." And this is exactly what these politicians are doing. They are riling up one sector of the population against another sector of the population. And when we go into the whole history now of what they are doing with the Citizenship Act, the thing will become very much more clearer. But to ease our task in this area, I'm going to pose myself just 3 little questions here. The first question is, what does this particular legislation, what is the danger that it poses for Muslims in India presently? Secondly, why are Muslims oppressed and marginalized in India? And thirdly, how are Muslims responding to these latest challenges? It is important to note that India is not a Hindu theocratic or a Hindu religious state, although the Hindu nationalists have always defined India as a Hindu nation, just like the Jews today define Israel as a Jewish nation. Hinduism, of course, is a great and ancient religion. It is one of humanity's greatest spiritual treasures. And this current state of affairs has got nothing to do with the Hindu faith, with Hinduism. It has to do with an ideology called Hindutva. Hindutva ideology is an exclusivist, anti-Muslim, ethno-cultural, nationalist expression that selectively employs Hindu religious symbols for political gain. Now, in providing answers to these questions, it will entail that we have some understanding of the forces at play and the kind of story or narrative that they want to portray. With an unassailable parliamentary majority in place, the Hindutva leading BJP party saw its road clear to implement a series of reforms aimed at fulfilling its avowed aim of establishing a Hindu government or a Hindu Rashtra. Such a religious government, of course, has little regard for the diversity and the plurality of ethnicities, cultures, religions, and languages that comprise contemporary India. Justice and fairness towards all is not amongst its better tendencies. Currently, the Hindutva espousing ideologues, they have Islam and Muslims fixed into their crosshairs. And evidence for this arises from the treatment that they have given to the people of Kashmir, the relegation of the status of the Urdu language, the threatening rhetoric about the future of Muslim personal law in India, and the frantic efforts which they are making just to remove any positive mention of what Muslims have done for the benefit of India. Now, all these anti-Muslim activities, however, they reach their high water mark with the introduction of this particular legislation, the citizenship legislation. None of these issues have evoked the kind of responses as we have seen with this. Now, the BJP never envisaged the kind of opposition that this legislation would evoke from both Muslims and non-Muslims alike. This legislation is in essence statutory discrimination. In other words, discrimination written into the country's law books. Discrimination based on religion written into law. Here in South Africa, this is not new to us. This is not news to us. We know we had a name for such kind of behavior on the part of the state. We used to call it, you rightly guessed, we used to call it apartheid. The BJP thought that the vast majority of Indians would accept this legislation as it is so anti-Muslim in its sentiment. But that clearly is a sentiment which is not endorsed by the thousands of protests and rallies which we have seen in India, across the face of India. What it states basically, that if you are a refugee or an illegal immigrant and you have no document to verify your potential citizenship claim, you could be arrested and placed in a concentration camp before being deported. If, however, you belong to the Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Christian or Parsi faith, you have nothing to fear. In fact, your request for citizenship could be fast-tracked. If you are a Muslim, however, you could be deported. This is how discriminatory this legislation is. Now, people who have lived in India for generations, they have similar fears. Many citizens are poor and illiterate, and they are by no means can they produce birth certificates or proof of descent. And they don't only want your own proof of descent, it must go back 3 generations. It is totally absurd to apply these laws, therefore, in a country where most births have only been recorded for the last 30 years. Besides deportation, what does statelessness mean? It means the state is not obliged to protect you. Somebody does some harm to you, you can't go to the police station and complain because you're a non-citizen. You are not allowed access to state resources for health, housing, social welfare, school, jobs, and other essential needs. This legislation ensures that non-citizens lose voting rights. The state treats you like a non-person. You cease to exist as far as the ruling government is concerned. The state forces you to live in a state of limbo. Now the question to ask then, is that not what made the Rohingya people so vulnerable in the Rakhine state in Myanmar, and what made the genocide there possible? Muslims in India are facing an existential crisis, and they have all the reason to protest mightily at this nefarious piece of legislation. Now, turning to the second question, why Muslims are so despised and marginalized in India today, takes us to the rise of the BJP as a political force and the triumph of Narendra Modi as a strong man bolstered by significant Indian capital as an answer to all of India's complex social and political problems. The Indian economy is not doing well. It has failed to meet the needs of the growing population. Therefore, minorities identified by race, by caste, by religion, by gender are used as scapegoats, and they are held responsible for India's precarious position today. That is, of course, a big lie, and a lie big enough, however, to rile up sections of the population to justify hate and violence against minorities. Like Trump, Indian politicians play to their faithful devotees, to the base of their faithful devotees, to secure their positions of power once again at the next election. Now, they say that if racism was America's original sin, then India's original sin is the caste system. The caste system is religiously sanctioned discrimination. Like, you cannot change your race, you can't change the circumstances of your birth. If you are born into an upper caste family, you have all the privileges. But if you are born into a lower caste family, you can't at a later stage of your life claim that suddenly you want upper caste privileges. And if you look at the lowest segment of the caste of a caste-based society, they are defined by the most humiliating form of work that can ever be prescribed to them, such as clearing up night soil, carrying away the carcasses of dead animals. Socially, they are regarded as impure. They cannot drink from the same well or eat from the same utensils as upper caste Hindus. And they're not allowed to marry across caste lines. Now, if that is the position, I ask you, within Hindu society, you can imagine well the outside position that they reserve for us. If I want to become a Hindu tomorrow, I don't know what kind of Hindu, they're going to accept me as. If I want to become upper caste, there's no place for me in that sort of categorization. Now, a closer study of the Indian society also shows us how large sectors of the Indian population have been mobilized into identifiable groups, and these people display a very strong sense of unavenged grievance. Now, let me just simply explain to you, what this means. And I think the best way to explain this to you, is to give you a little story. When I was studying in Durban, there was a masjid right next to the house where I was living. And this mosque was was in the road, parallel to one of the main roads. And on a Friday, it would be very difficult for people to get to this mosque. So what a lot of Muslims, worshippers used to do, there was a one-way road, they should hit the one-way to get to the mosque in time. And we soon realized what was happening here. These people were being ticketed. Now, of course, it's a traffic offense, to go across a one-way. Nobody, makes that, But out of all the roads and all the parts of Durban, one non-Muslim traffic officer found it convenient to come there on a Friday because he's going to ticket all the Muslims there on a Friday. So we realized, this is the game that you are playing. We're going to show you a thing or two. We got a few young boys and we asked them to go and stand a little bit further from where the traffic officer was standing and tell the Muslims as they come in, watch out, there's a traffic officer behind there. 1 week passed, 2 weeks passed, the traffic officer promptly realized, this is bad for the business, and off he went. What I'm saying to you, this is what is happening in India. If you want to get your child into a school, if you want a bank loan, if you want a driver's license, if you want a job, if you want any form of promotion, but there is a Hindutva-leaning person that is going to make that particular decision for you, he's going to look and say, who is coming? Oh yes, a Muslim coming in. No, no job, sorry, go. Our quota is full. All sorts of excuses. This is discrimination. This is structural form of discrimination. It is built into Indian society. And that is what our Muslims have to suffer day in and day out. This is what they have to suffer. This is not new. They did this to the Jews. They did this, the Nazis and the fascist people with Hitler and Mussolini did this to the Jews. And we know what happened. Eventually 6 million of these people died in the gas chambers. Do you know that these Hindu organizations, they regard Hitler and Mussolini and his Nazi and fascist practices, they regard them as their role models. You go to India today, you can buy Mein Kampf on the road quite easily. Organizations amongst them such as the RSS, the Shiv Sena, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, the Bajrang Dal, all of them. These are ideological organizations. They are the mainstream of support for the BJP and for Narendra Modi. Narendra Modi, from the age of 8 already, he was a member of the RSS. Now, in many ways, their practices are reminiscent of what happened to Afro-Americans in the deep south of America. They feel licensed to inflict pain, maim, murder Muslim men, and to rape Muslim women. These are modern versions of terrorism which tells Muslims you are unwelcome in India and you survive here only at our wish. Now, there are many things which they have done, but I'm going to give you just a few little examples here. They say that Muslims are privileged. Muslims form 14% of India's population. But you know what percentage of wealth Muslims own? Only 2 to 3%. Muslims are at the bottom of the rung by every conceivable metric of social development. They are underrepresented in the police, army, security forces, etc. Since 9/11, Islamophobia has reared its ugly head in Modi's India more than in Trump's America. Security and intelligence agencies blame Muslims for acts of terrorism. And the terrorism of the Hindu right wing, which is occurring right under their noses, goes completely unnoticed. Communal riots are nothing new to India. If I have to give you a talk, I can give you talks and talks and talks about communal riots. But let me just tell you about what happened in 2002 with the Gujarat riots, when more than 2,000 men, women and children were brutally murdered. I'm going to spare you the details, but I'm going to tell you just one thing, that in your du'as today, remember those unborn children were not even saved. Unborn children were ripped out of their mother's wombs. Hindutva espousing Indians accuse Muslims of partition and blame Muslims for carving colonial India into 2 states. You know what is the truth about that? When Pakistan was formed in 1947, we didn't have universal franchise, universal adult franchise like we have today. Every person over the 18 can vote. Only 3% of the population could vote. And which were that 3% of the people of the population? Those were the landed people, landed gentry, the rich, those who were literate. Only 3% of the people could vote. So are you telling me that you're going to take the views of only 3% of the people and you are going to blame, you're going to hold that voice as being representative of what the rest of the 97% thought? The BJP followers would want us to think that Muslims were responsible for the partition of Pakistan. Do they ever bother to go back into their own history and to know that in 1947, the BJP, the forerunner of the BJP, the Hindu Mahasabha, was in fact in a coalition government with the Muslim League. And the one common political thread that existed between the Muslim League and between the BJP was that both of them wanted a 2-state solution, not a 1-state solution. In other words, they were on the side of the parties that wanted to carve up India, yet Muslims are blamed today. They have ripped history textbooks apart. They don't want to tell us any of all the good things which Muslims have done. They don't teach our students about Akbar and Tipu Sultan and about the pluralistic attitude which these people had, the tolerant attitude which they had towards other religions. They're not going to tell you about Mulvi Liaquat Ali. Mulvi Liaquat Ali in 1857 was the leader of the first independence struggle against the British. They won't tell you what happened in 1965 when there was a war between India and Pakistan. And one person, a Muslim, Hawaldar Abdul Hamid, was posthumously awarded India's highest military honors, the Paramvir Chakra, for his bravery defending his fatherland. They will not tell you about the Zakir Hussain and about the Abul Pakir General Abdul Kalam. Both of these were state presidents in the post-partition India. They will not tell you that the same person, this last person whom I mentioned, was responsible, single-handedly responsible for bringing India into the world as a nuclear power. He was responsible single-handedly for developing India's defense missile capacity as it stands today. The Bajrang Dal and the RSS, they have formed vigilante groups to protect cows. And they slaughter Muslims. They use butcher cleavers to kill Muslims if they find you eating beef. Astaghfirullah. And yet the truth about it is many Hindus also eat beef. Do they even want to tell? Let me tell you also what they do. That India is the world's second largest exporter of cattle. And that particular trade in India is not in the hands of Muslims. It is in the hands of Hindus. And those cattle that are exported, you think those cattle are exported to different parts of the world because those animals are going to be treated as sacred animals? Those animals are exported for their beef and for their hides so you can make fine leather shoes. We can go on. And there are so many things which we can talk about, but let me come to a conclusion and share just with you the third part. And there's so many things I wanted to say, but there is just one story which has hit me, Imam, and I really want to share the story. Just two parts to the story. The first story is, after the Babri Masjid, now, about the story about the Babri Masjid, the mosque was burned down, it was demolished, it was destroyed in really a barbaric act. This happened in 1992. And after that, what happened? About 2 days afterwards, there was a person with the name of Balbir Singh. Balbir Singh is an MA graduate, and he was one of the first volunteers to come to the site of the demolished, to demolish the masjid. Little did he realize that his initial steps that he would take, where he passed in life, he would eventually go. 2 days after the incident, after they had destroyed the mosque, he became so distraught within himself, realizing what he had done. He said, Muslims don't gather into a masjid because there's wealth, because there's money or things like that. They come there to come and pray, to come and submit themselves before their Bhagwan, as he said it. And he was really went on to see this process of introspection, and he began to feel tremendously guilty about what he had done. So he visited a Maulana, and the Maulana listened to his story, and the Maulana told him something very profound. Maulana told him, my dear young man, if you think that you've done a great wrong by destroying one of the houses of Allah, let me tell you that Allah's rahmah is greater than the wrong which you can ever do. You know what was the outcome of that? Balbir Singh fell at the feet of this Maulana and he cried like a little child and he asked for maaf for what he had done. He became Muhammad Amir and he took a vow that for the one house of Allah which he had destroyed, he's going to build 100 homes. He's going to build 100 houses for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The latest report, he has completed over 90 masajid. The very last story that I want to tell you, I read so much about India. I read so many books, so many articles. I discussed so many things with the Imam, it's just not true. But when I finished reading all of it, a thought came to my mind one day that I could just sit and say, just chuck all of this aside. It means absolutely nothing. Your parents are always your first teachers. They are your first teachers. And a story came to my mind about my father. And what my father and my mother did more than 6 decades ago. My father had a little shop in District 6. And there nearby, there was a Hindu family whose son had got married. And they were desperate to find some accommodation for this newly married couple. So they approached my father. My father didn't look left or right. It's a neighbor. He's in need. And he accommodated this man and this woman in his house. No questions asked. That's neighborliness. He accommodated them in his house. Many years after that, my mother shared the story with me. And she tells me, do you know what? During that time, that Tarababi and Gaman were staying here with us. You were born. I gave birth to you. And the night I gave birth to you, I had so much of pain. I could not feed you. Tarababi, this Hindu lady, took you into her arms and she walked around with you. And she took pieces of cotton wool and she dipped it in some milk and she fed you. Let me tell you, whatever I read suddenly became of secondary significance to me. I can do no better than to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this particular occasion that, oh Allah, you have her ruh in your hand. I want you, Allah, to bless this ruh. And I want you, Allah, to reward her for this kindness and for this compassion. And let me tell you, there is not one, but there are hundreds, there are thousands, if not zillions of such examples, of beautiful examples of Hindu-Muslim cooperation, of neighborliness, which our friends and our family will tell you on countless occasions. We cannot allow these politicians to divide us. What we have is wonderful, the beautiful deen that we have. Muslims in India have a great role to play. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their moment of need to grant them all the strength. وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. صدق الله العلي العظيم.